Chapter 15. The Return Home. By morning all the boys were dressed in pirate clothes, and the ship was sailing for the mainland. From there, Peter had decided that flying would be the fastest way for the children to get home. Everyone agreed Captain Pan was very strict, and doing as you were told was the only safe option. Back at number 14, Mrs. Darling never left the house. All the beds were freshly made every day, and the nursery window was always left open. The only change to be seen in the nursery was that between 9 in the morning and 6 at night, the kennel was no longer there. When the children had flown away, Mr. Darling blamed himself. He believed that if he had not chained Nana up, the children would have stayed safe. So he crawled into the kennel and swore that he would not leave it until his children came back. He even took a cab to and from work, sitting inside the kennel, and spent his whole working day in it too. On the day the children returned, Mrs. Darling was in the nursery waiting for Mr. Darling to come home. Her eyes were so sad, and all her joyfulness had gone because she had lost her little ones. And as she waited, she fell asleep in her chair, and her hand moved restlessly on her chest, as if she had a pain there. Her children were only 2 miles away, and they were flying towards the window fast. She woke up, calling their names, but there was no one in the room but Nana. "Oh, Nana," she cried, "I dreamt my dear ones had come back." Nana's eyes were tearful, but all she could do was put her paw gently on her mistress's lap. When Mr. Darling got home, that was how he found Mrs. Darling and Nana. "Won't you shut that window?" he said. "It's rather cold." "Oh, George, never ask me to do that. The window must always be left open for them. Always, always." Mr. Darling said sorry, and then he curled up inside the kennel and went to sleep. While he slept, Peter and Tinker Bell flew in through the window. "Quick, Tink," he whispered. "Close the window. Now let's hide. When Wendy comes, she will think her mother has shut her out, and she will have to come back with me." Then he peeped into the nursery and saw Wendy's mother playing the piano with tears sitting in her eyes. "She's awfully fond of Wendy," he said to himself. "But I'm fond of her too. We can't both have her, lady." But the lady would not cheer up, and he was unhappy. He stopped looking at her, but he could not stop thinking of her. He skipped about and made funny faces, but he still couldn't forget a sadness. "Oh, all right," he said at last, and gulped. Then he opened the window. "Come on, Tink," he cried. "We don't want any silly mothers," and he flew away. So Wendy, John and Michael found the window open for them after all. "I think I have been here before," said Michael, looking around him. "Of course you have, silly. That's your old bed," said Wendy. "I knew that," Michael said, but he didn't sound sure. "There's a man inside this kennel," said John. "It's father," Wendy cried, just as Mrs. Darling began playing the piano again. "And that's mother." "Then are you not really our mother?" asked Michael. And suddenly Wendy felt terrible for taking them away from their real home. "Let's get into bed," she said. and be there when she comes in, just as if we never had been away. And so when Mrs. Darling went into the nursery to see her husband was asleep, all the beds were occupied. The children waited for her cry of joy, but it did not come. She saw them, but she did not believe they were there, because she had seen them in their beds so often in her dreams. "Mother," Wendy cried, and the children slipped out of bed and ran to her. Mrs. Darling stretched out her arms for them. Mr. Darling woke up then, and Nana came rushing in. There could not have been a lovelier sight, but there was no one to see it except a little boy who was staring in at the window. He had many joys that other children can never know, but he was looking through the window at the one joy from which he must be forever barred.